Hello and welcome. Right now we're going to be showing you how the crafter works in the game Mythwind, and we're going to walk through a bit of the tutorial and just see how the gameplay overall works, but specifically for how the crafter will be functioning within that. So starting off, I have done the setup for the crafter, which involves pulling the tray out, setting up the craft items, pulling out the roll skills. I have put one of each craft item in my draw bag. I have randomly put 2 craft items in the first space of the workshop and the second space of the workshop. And I have my, my little crafter here ready to go. And so the town board is also set up, of course. We've got the weather, adventure, and event deck here ready to go. All of my buildings are here ready to go. My workers and my sprite die are ready to go. And my season tile and my first gold card. So we're just going to walk through it the same way that you would experience. First off, just make sure everyone's aware this is of course a prototype, so the finished version will be a little bit different. And of course, if you want to avoid any kind of story element spoilers, we're only going to go through the tutorial, but there is of course a little bit of story stuff in there. You've been warned. Okay, so the first thing you do every turn is you flip over this weather deck, and the first weather card here explains, as part of the tutorial, what the purpose of these weather decks are, and that they're basically a turn timer. They let you know what the weather is, and they will also let you know if you need to check the event deck, which is this orange icon here. So let's have a look at the event deck here really quick. And this is giving us a little bit of the story of first showing up. It's called Arrival, and it says, your party has arrived in a clearing. The forest has thinned as you've gotten closer to the tower that you could see when first entering the valley. Between you and the tower, still a distance away, are some run-down foundations. A few walls still barely stand, but clearly a community used to exist here. We'll have a look at event card 2. One of the sprites that guided you into the valley tugs your hand and points you towards the forest as a large tree falls with a thud across the path you just traveled. It will have to be dealt with. All players must go to the adventure action in town during the daytime phase. That town action is taken once, but all players will take the corresponding character action. When the adventure action is resolved, consult your player journal for next steps. So now that we've finished the weather card and the event deck, we're now in the daytime phase, and like it tells us to do, we're going to go to the adventure deck. If you're in the tutorial with multiple players, only one person needs to do this, and everybody will experience the effect. Once you're through the tutorial, everyone can individually do what they want to do in town. So we're going to look at the adventure deck, and the first adventure we run into is called Out for a Hike, and it says that is not correct. This is slightly out of order. So the first card we want is Fallen Tree, which follows up on the event card we just read. The tree that has fallen here will block any future travelers. It certainly won't allow you to leave the valley easily. You'll have to chop it up to restore access to the path and then decide what to do with the lumber. So we can choose between taking the lumber to the town for material, or we can use it to create a more stable path here and ease travel in the future. After we choose, we're going to flip the card over and read the result. I'm going to choose B in this case. We're going to make for easier travel. And B lets us know that the sprites appreciate your improvement to the road. So we're actually going to go ahead and add a sprite to the tower. I'm going to roll it first, add it to the tower there, and we'll talk more about what that means later. And we're also going to raise culture by 1 step on the town board here. So we made a decision, and we get an outcome there. And that's the adventure card. And so now that we've done the adventure action, we're going to do the player action. And so on the player board here, you can see that there is actions here that correspond to each of the town action spaces. The adventure action, hire, use a building, construct a building, and town improvement. We did adventure, so that means I'm going to add a backpack to my draw bag. And then as part of the crafter action, I always draw 3 tokens out of the draw bag every turn. And I think in the final version we'll have slightly bigger draw bags for hands like mine. Okay, so we have a little statue, we have some boots, and we have paper. And so We have a couple of different options as the crafter when you draw from the draw bag. I can either go ahead and add a craft item into the workshop, which I'm going to do with one of these. But I can also spend paper in this case to move the same item into the next space of the workshop. And in fact, I've also got boots here already in the workshop. So I'm going to use this just to continue to work on the boots and move that along in the workshop too. So I now have 3 items in space 2 of the workshop, 1 in space 1, and that's the end of my turn. So now we get to go to day 2. I'm going to return the crafter back to my board here, and we'll carry on with the tutorial. So day 2 of the weather lets us know that when we discard the weather cards, stack them so you can see multiple weather. We'll explain why on a later turn here. And it also gives me once again the event card icon. So we're going to check the event cards and see day 2 here is Humble Beginnings. A gathering is held to decide the town's first steps. The rain convinces everyone that a roof is needed to make future meetings more agreeable. So all players must go to the build action in town during daytime. They will build the longhouse during this turn. That town action is taken once, but all players will take the corresponding character action. So once again, it's just one town action for everybody as we're learning the game together. So I'm going to the build action here with my crafter. We're going to look for the longhouse, which I would have been good to scout out ahead of time here. There it is. And on the back of the longhouse, it lets us know the cost and where it goes in the build queue. So in this case, it costs us 1 production. And I realize now that there is a misprint on the adventure deck. Instead of gaining a blue sprite die, I should have gained a production. So we'll just pretend that happened. And we're now going to spend that production so we can build the longhouse. And it's going to go in step 1 of the build queue. Once it moves off of the build queue, it'll be complete, and then we're going to gain 1 sprite die and 1 worker die. And I actually jumped ahead of there a little bit. The event card number 4 here is going to explain a lot of what I just explained here about what you're looking for on the back of the building tile. So now that we've done the town action, we'll do the corresponding player action. Build lets us add a hammer to the draw bag for the crafter. Just 1, not 2. So I'll mix it up a little bit in there and draw 3 more. And I'm going to introduce a new action that you can do this turn after we add these to the workshop here. And so I've drawn 2 backpacks and a boot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep moving this backpack up. I want to get that as close to finish as possible. And the finished version of these boards will be a little easier to use because we're actually going to have little slats in there, so these tokens will stand up nicely. And then with this this boot I have in the draw space, I'm going to spend that to actually sell this unfinished boot because I'd like to get a little bit of money. And so because it's in the second phase of the workshop, I'll get 2 coins. And once again, in the finished version, it'll show a little bit more clearly how much money you get for each phase of the workshop. Okay, so that's the end of day 2 there. I'm going to bring back my crafter here. And we'll move on to day 3. So day 3. Now you're going to notice that there's a new weather symbol. There's also the event tile again, which we'll read. And then there's also this build queue symbol, which I'll explain momentarily. The weather card lets you know all about that. But let's do these in order. So we're going to look at the event card first. And Helping Hands is the name of the event card. Hamish leans against the longhouse. Yep, that's solid. Now that this building is done, I've seen a couple of new residents show up, as well as these sprite helpers. We've been chatting, and anyone who needs helpers can come to the tower to hire a worker or a sprite. The tower is where you can go to do the hire town action. The cost to hire is gold, and gold is listed on the tower. You can hire multiple workers and or sprites die per turn. All players must go to the hire position in town during the daytime. All players are eligible to hire the available worker and or sprite die at the cost listed on the tower. And then we'll also read event card 7 here. Workers and sprites are dice that can be spent to bolster what you can accomplish with your character. Refer to your character's journal to see exactly how they benefit you. Every time a worker or sprite do an action, reduce the value of the die by 1. So, we have built the longhouse thanks to this construct action on the weather deck. We're going to go ahead and stick that over here. And like it says on the bottom of the longhouse, the blue banner that lets us know what we get immediately. And that's a blue sprite die and an orange worker die. And stick those in there. And it's not a great roll, but we still have workers that help us and sprite die to help us. And the event deck has instructed us to go to the higher action. So I could either spend 2 to get one of these or 5 to get both. I'm going to go ahead and just spend 2 at this time and grab the sprite die. And that's going to put it right here in my tray. And the sprite is there ready for me to make use of their assistance. And so now that the town action is done, I've done the higher action. I'm going to add paper to my draw bag. And we'll go ahead and pull 3 out here. Oops, or 4. One, 2, and 3. Eventually. Okay, so we've got a hammer, a backpack, and a papyrus. I don't actually have a hammer in my workshop, so I'm going to go ahead and just get that started. Start building some tools. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to advance this paper further along in the workshop, and I'm going to go ahead and advance the backpack. So I actually have a completed backpack in my workshop. It's in the final space, which is great. That gives me some more options, which I'll explain shortly. What I can also choose to do is use my sprite die here, and you can see some of the actions here have blue, some have orange, this one has both. That means that I can put this blue die here and move the corresponding paper item one step further along in the workshop. I could have also chosen to use it here, which would let me put another craft item of my choosing into the draw bag. And if I had an orange worker die, it would allow me to draw an extra item out of my draw bag. But for now, I've just gone ahead and advanced the paper. So now that the turn is over, it does mean that there's another step in upkeep now that I have these dice here. Bring back the crafter figure like normal. If I had, say, like 2 pips on that die, if I wanted to keep it for the next turn, I would reduce it to 1, and I would spend 1 to continue to pay them. Since it's only has 1 on there, I'm going to re-roll it and stick it back in town here. It's ready to help the next person who comes along. On to the next day. So we have some rain. We have another event card. And let's see what happens here. In the longhouse, Hamish catches your attention by the longhouse. Those workers and sprites are good helpers, eh? With the extra help, you may have time to work on your skills. Come by the longhouse to practice. All players must go to the longhouse building tile in town during daytime. At the longhouse, a player can improve their skills, add a basic skill to your character for free. For more info on upgraded skills, see your character journal. So I'm gonna, now that we have buildings here, I'm gonna put my my crafter right on the building there, and you can see that as you add more buildings, it's going to give you just more and more options as to what you can do in town. In this case, the longhouse allows you to buy roll skills, and I know that my journal lets me grab the working fast tile for free. Normally, I would need 1 completed hammer and 1 completed boot in order to get that skill, and these other skills let me know what the cost is. These have to be finished items in order to claim those. So, but now that I've got working fast, I'm going to go ahead and put this down here on the bottom. And what that means is every time I trigger that line, I'm going to get to advance one of my items in the workshop for free. So it's we're working fast. We're getting more done when we're on that line there. So this turn we've done the use a building action. So we're going to add a boot to the draw bag. We're going to draw 3 more tiles out. And there we go. We're already benefiting from an extra boot. So I'm going to go ahead and put the boot in the workshop. And then I'm going to spend the other one to advance it 1 step. So it's already into step 2 of the workshop. Now we've got some other options here because I have drawn a backpack in the drawn item space. And I have a finished backpack, as you remember. So we're going to do something called boosting reputation right now. And as you can see on the right hand side of the crafter here, there is an illustration of each of the items. The backpack's along here at the top. And what this is telling me is how much I can sell a finished item of that craft item for. So right now, if I were to sell this finished backpack, I'd only get 4. But instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend this to boost the reputation, which means that I can lift this off, oops, and rotate this one step. And now I am known as a slightly better maker of backpacks than I was yesterday. So now when I want to sell a finished backpack, it's going to earn me 5 gold. So I'm spending this to boost my reputation. I'm not getting any money for it right now, but it will pay off in the future. And that's going to get returned to the supply. And so we're at the end of the day again. We'll do a couple more turns here. This comes back. I don't have any dies that I need to pay to hold on to, so I will move on to the next day. Nice sunny day here. I'm going to read the event again. And this is a gift. The sprite who led you into the valley pulls you aside. She's one of the few who speaks and seems to be a leader among her people. Her name is Fix. Things seem to be progressing nicely. Let me offer you a tip, she says. All players must go to the town improvement action in town during daytime. All players will perform the town improvement action. The cost to improve each resource varies depending on your character, which I'll explain in a moment. Fix continues. I can see that there are plans to build a general store. Good for you, but you lack the resources. Let me help. Magically raise the level of your food, income production, and culture by 1. She appears tired from the effort. Take care of your home, and it will take care of you. So we're going to go to this town improvement space, and normally for the crafter, you can see the cost to raise each of those various town resources. The crafter is most effectively able to boost production, but food is the most expensive. Whereas if you're playing with another role like the farmer, the food is the cheapest, which makes sense because they produce food. So thankfully Fix is going to boost everything for us by 1. So we're not having to spend any money at this time. But normally it would cost you money. And that's the main reason why you're trying to earn gold throughout the game, is to continue to improve the town's various resources. So now that we've done that, we're going to put a little statue craft item in the draw bag. And Fix did give us a little hint of what's to come in the fact that the general store is something that she highlighted. And at the back we can see it's going to cost an income and a food at some point to get that into the build queue. So I'm just going to keep that handy because I happen to know I'm going to need that soon. And we'll pull out 3 more craft items. And got a boot, a paper, and a statue. So I'm going to go ahead and just get the paper all the way to the end, because as we can see there's more options. When we get finished items, I can boost reputation, I can pick up role skills, and those are all fantastic. I'm going to move along the boots in the workshop, and I'm going to move along this statue in the workshop. And it is tempting to maybe sell them for a bit of money, but for now I'm going to play the long game a little bit. So now that the turn's over, I'll grab the crafter, and we'll carry on to the next day here. We're just about at the end of the tutorial. We've almost covered everything that the characters can do at the beginning. So just a couple of things we'll introduce here momentarily. So this last weather card here lets you know that it's going to trigger a seasonal effect. And if you look at the top of the town board here, that's where you would check that. So in springtime, when it rains and then it's sunny and then it's cloudy, you have sort of a nice temperate weather. It leads to happy work, and that's actually going to produce production even once more. If we get just too much rain in the spring, that would flood, and we actually would lose food as a result, which obviously we don't want. We can also potentially have some really nice working conditions where it's cloudy, sunny, and cloudy again, and that's actually going to allow us to advance the build queue. So, ideal work conditions mean we're building a little faster. But for now, we just added the production. And so we do have the event card queue there. So we're going to look at growing town here. A new visitor in town is scoping out some of the old foundations. Yes, I think this will do nicely, they say. When passerby is asked what he is up to, he declares, "This is where the town's first general store will be built. It will keep any manner of bits and bobs to help you in your endeavors. But first I need your help." So one player must go to the build action in town during the daytime to build the general store. Other players are free to do the town action of their choice. So you can see now that this opens up a bit. I'm going to go to the build queue, of course, for the general store, but if anyone was playing with me, they could do a different town action now. The general store, as I mentioned, is going to cost an income, a food, and it's going to go into the first space of the build queue. And once that is complete, you can also see that it's going to give us another sprite and another worker die. Okay, so I've gone to the build space. I'm going to throw a hammer in the bag, and we'll see what we draw here. Got a paper, I've got a paper, and I've got a boot. So I'll do the easy one first here and just move the boot along. And with the paper, I think I may hold on to that because if I get 2 of those done, I can actually get a nice roll skill there called worker encouragement. So I'm going to put another one into the workshop and move it along with my second one. So we're making headway there. And maybe what I'll do soon is hire a blue sprite die to help me move that paper along faster, which will allow me to get the roll skill. So you can see how things kind of connect and chain together as you are accomplishing more actions. And I actually just have noticed that last turn when we did our town improvement, I forgot to trigger this roll skill. So the paper wasn't in there yet. So we'll say I'll go ahead and move the boots to the finished items here. Okay, and then I think we'll do one more turn here. And we can wrap that up because we've really shown how everything connects. It is another event card. And yeah. So we've got a town party now. Hamish is in good spirits as your small community has a celebratory gathering to commemorate your early progress. This is exactly the start we would have hoped for, but doesn't it feel a bit aimless? I think that we may need to get organized in how we move forward. So now that we've completed the tutorial, we'll draw 2 gold cards at random and choose one. I've already chosen one and put accelerated growth here. And we'll need to complete the goal by the end of the season, 20 days, and there are 20 cards left in that weather deck. The back of the gold card will reveal your reward for completion and consequence for not. So if at the end of the season we hit the highest and the lowest town resource must be at least 4 spaces apart. So if I do not have them 4 spaces apart, I would lose a production and lose a food. But if I do get them the highest and lowest 4 spaces apart, I'm going to add a worker die, and I'm going to introduce gold card 12 into my pile, which means I'm going to have that option to choose from in the future. And so the event deck is no longer telling me what to do because we are through the tutorial really, and now you can choose what you want to do, and that's how you play Mythwind with the Crafter. I hope it looks as fun for you as it is for me. Thanks.